heard something strange from this box. Oh, what the heck is that? Oh, crud. Oh, it's a monster. Peach time. Howdy hey fellas, this is Jezza, back at it again. And this is a video I won't take lightly because this is one of the best albums I've heard in a long time. Like, not just in the scope of whatever's current, it's just in general of what I've been listening to overall. It's been so long since I've found an album that's this consistent and fun and worth coming back to over and over. It offers so much, it's got so much going for it, there's so many things you can pick out from it, and that album is Virtue, the new Voidz album. Voidz are an experimental rock band fronted by Julian Casablancas, which hopefully you should know is the frontman of The Strokes. So right off the bat you should know, same vocalist as The Strokes, you're gonna have something that you know going into it, assuming you've heard The Strokes. You probably have. Their first album, Tyranny, came out in 2014. It was a bit hit and miss. They tried a bunch of different things, and in the end it kind of sounded muddy and messy in sound. There's some great tracks on it, like Human Sadness, but overall it's a very obviously flawed project. But their new album, Virtue, is way more structured, way more accessible, way more fully formed. Everything they try is done to full effect, and it's one of the most interesting albums I've heard in a while. So yeah, right off the bat, even though it's pretty dang experimental, it's very poppy, it's very accessible. You can pick out over half the tracks here and most people will be able to enjoy them, no matter what musical background you come from, etc. Some of the songs are very hypnagogic pop, some of them are very Strokes, obviously. And what I love about this is that it doesn't lose anything from this accessibility. They still experiment all over the place. They still toy with so many different styles and try so many different weird things, and it still comes out super melodic, infectious, and fun. And on the experimental side of things, things are just way more fleshed out here. Every track you know exactly what they're going for. On Tyranny you had a lot of moments where it's like, we're kind of doing this, we're kind of, let's throw in some electronic loops. Everything has a purpose on Virtue. Everything feels like it's in its right place. The diversity displayed on this album is a very strong aspect of it. The mere fact that every other track sounds totally different means that it's very replayable. 10 plus listens in, I still find new things, I still find new ways to enjoy the other songs. There are definitely some tracks that are instantly lovable, and then there's other tracks that you don't realize just how great they are until a few listens in. This album is definitely a grower, and it's one that I already was super intrigued by on first listen. So a grower that already starts off in a very, yeah, territory. It's just got everything going for it, man. And it's not just the fact that each track has its own unique identity, because overall the album is pretty strong. It's a bit subtle in its approach, but there's various lyrics and song titles that are referenced in other songs, and different themes that come up within the songs are kind of similar to each other. There's definitely political undertones that kind of link a lot of the tracks together. It definitely feels like there's a flow going, even if the tracks are so different. And it's also both diverse in styling and mood. The songs go from being fun and zany, to paranoid, to angry, to somber, to being just chilled out. And those political themes, like I mentioned, are pretty subtle. They're in the background, they don't tread on the music in any way. It doesn't get in the way at all if you're one of those kind of people that doesn't care. Like me. I'm usually quick to criticize music that relies too much on its political message, but it's done pretty well here. Like, I'm doing nothing but praising this album, so you know it did it right. It's there for anyone who wants to look into it, but it's not in your face. I want to speak about this album a bit track to track because it is one of those albums that is just so consistent. There's only like 3 songs I wouldn't consider highlights. And there's 15 tracks, that's 12 highlights. Leave It In My Dreams is a lovable callback to Julian's past with The Strokes. If it were on Room on Fire, it would be one of my favorite tracks on Room on Fire. Julian has a gift for the choruses. He's one of those people that just knows how to make a very catchy, fun song. And even though it's a Voidz track, it's one of the best Strokes songs in years. In spirit. So Leave It In My Dreams is a pretty normal song, and track 2, Curious, dives deep into the weird. It's the ultimate antithesis to the previous song, and it's a good way to set up what to expect for the rest of the album. Curious is another good example of a song that uses that whole artistic auto-tune that's been around for like a decade now. The Middle Eastern and hypnagogic pop influences are clear. Seriously though, what Julian does with the auto-tune in the very beginning is just so good. He just creates this very weird futuristic melody out of it. The song is so weird and all over the place, but still feels very well put together, and I love it. There's a lot of people calling it Arabian prison jazz, and I can roll with it. I can roll with that. Then we get Pyramid of Bones, which introduces the more aggressive side of the album. It dips into metal with a harder guitar sound and takes on social issues such as white hypocrisy head on. This is one of the tracks that really stood out to me on first listen. It's very instantly likable. That breakdown of sorts near the end, oh, I just love it. Permanent High School is another Strokes-esque song. It's very melodically strong, especially near the end. The ending melody is just one of my favorite moments on the album. It's one of the more normal songs, but don't get me wrong, it is a highlight. Then Alienation comes in with a dark trip-hop flavored instrumental. This is another track with more political overtones. The atmosphere on this one is great. I love how the piano and the whistling or whatever that is adds to it. I just love it for its dark groove that it makes. One of the Ones is another one of the more aggressive songs on the album. Not as great as the other songs on the album, but it's got this great out of nowhere guitar ditty near the middle. Like the song just switches modes and energy out of nowhere. Then there's All Words Are Made Up, a very rhythmic song with great synths. It's like half the song is set up to be this super catchy chorus. The alt-rock hip-hop flavored blend brings Beck to mind. This is one of those tracks I slept on for the longest time. Over repeated listens, it's gone to be one of my favorite tracks on the album. Think Before You Drink is a nice little acoustic cover that splits the album halfway, kind of like an intermission. It's not as essential as the rest of the album, but it's nice. It helps break up the pace of the energy, and it fits nicely in context of the more political songs like Pyramid of Bones. Okay, so then you get Wink. Oh, that's one of the best songs on the album. I love Wink. Oh, you know those kind of songs where there's like a little preemptive rhythmic section before the actual main rhythmic section kicks in? Wink does something like that, only it keeps switching back to it when needed. So it swaps between the less hard-hitting rhythmic section and the more hard-hitting rhythmic section. That way each time it switches back, it'll feel more powerful. It keeps switching back between the two rhythmic modes depending on when the song needs it. So that great transition that could have just been in the beginning is repeated throughout the track. There's also that juxtaposition between the little ditty that goes on in the background and everything else. At the end of several lines, Julian says, "Fuck yeah," which is pretty accurate because that's how I feel when I'm listening to this song. Oh, here comes the drums are coming back, yeah! Not a big fan of the way it cuts out though. Not a big fan of that. But then My Friend The Walls comes in, very obviously Radiohead influenced. Sounds like it came out of the early 00s era with that dark electronic rock sound, and it can be accounted for in the jazzy drumming, the Paranoid Android styled guitar line. The chorus comes in like a triumphant statement. The song is just set up in a very epic way, it reaches a sort of climax at the end. Then you get something completely different. Pink Ocean, and it might just be my favorite song on the album. I'd wager it's the most accessible song. It's one of the songs that instantly I fell in love with on first listen. Very accessible, slower, more laid back, very funky in nature. The vocals are sublime, the lyrics are great. Oh, everything works! Everything works! Oh, the bass line is so good, and just the melodies, oh! I'd wager this is my song of the year so far. And like, among the songs that I instantly fell in love with, like Pyramid of Bones, it's the only one that still remained my favorite. Pyramid of Bones kind of grew off of me. Not that I don't like it anymore, but I've grown to love a lot of other tracks more than it. Pink Ocean, though, is one of those songs that instantly grabbed me from the start, and it always gives me goosebumps. So then you get Black Hole, a shorter, lo-fi punk number. It feels a bit out of place even for this album, and that might just be because of its lo-fi sound. It's not very long, and it's enjoyable for what it is. It's very great loud in the car. Like, maybe I won't consider it a highlight, but I still love it by all means. It does what it needs to do. And again, it's not that long, so even if it is a song that you think is more lackluster, it doesn't really stay around for that long. It just rushes in, does its thing, and then you're at Lazy Boy, another one of the best songs on the album. Lazy Boy is a jazzy, soul-tinged alt-rock song that honestly gives me California vibes. The drum patterns change frequently, and both choruses are super catchy. This song has been stuck in my head for long periods of time. The way it shifts to a more synthy part of the track so naturally, it's done so well, and then it'll shift back to the more frantic drumming aspect of it. Then we get We're Where We Were, which is another one of the more aggressive, harder hitting songs. It's a bit hit and miss, kind of coming off like a Tyranny song, but oh, that build-up in the middle is so sublime. That midsection alone makes this song noteworthy. There's this frantic cowbell section, then there's a more improv-styled guitar line, and then drumming starts to come back in, and oh, Julian comes back in, and all of a sudden you find yourself, back in that hard-hitting mode. Oh, it's such a great moment. Then you get Pointlessness, which at first I was kind of just like, it's a nice outro. It ends the album on a bit of an ominous note. I like it. But boy, oh boy, over the past few weeks, it's really grown on me, and I can honestly say it's my second favorite track, right behind Pink Ocean. It works so brilliantly as a closer. I can see this at the end of a movie. Pointlessness is a very spacey, atmospheric track which gives a lot of breathing room. It's got nihilistic undertones in a way that kind of shifts in perspective by the end of the song. Like, it sounds very dreary at first, but then at the end it kind of sounds ambivalent. There's just a very effective key change near the end. The instrumentation just gets better and better near the end. It is the most epic sounding song, the most grandiose in scope, and the way it fades out in a very to be continued kind of way just, makes me want more. Man, this has kind of turned into a lengthy review, but for good reason. The big takeaway I get is that if you can make an album that's this fun, catchy, and replayable as it is artistic, fresh, and new sounding, you've struck gold. This is the best new thing I've heard since the last best new thing. I love the early Strokes albums, don't get me wrong, but I've honestly listened to this album already way more than any Strokes album. And what, it's only been like a month and a half since it's been released to the world? It just strikes all the right chords with me, and for that it's become one of my favorite albums. Like seriously, I honestly doubt anything can top this as album of the year for me. Listen up fellas, you're gonna have to really try hard for me this year if you're gonna want to beat out the Voidz. I'm talking to you, Smash Mouth. I really hope you surprise me this year. Oh man, I just hope that the Voidz just keep operating at this high level way into the future. In my eyes, they've quickly become one of the most essential modern bands. But that's just me. How do you feel about it, huh? I hope you enjoy it, but hey, if you don't, different strokes for different folks.
I have a Discord, it's pretty funny.
Oh, it's such a great ass. Right, so this is definitely the last video I'm filming in this room. And I'm not moving out with these. I'm not packing those. Adios. Oh, it's such a great ass. Oh, why is it so glitchy? Why? Oh, it's such a great ass.